Hey there, fellow citizens of the internet. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana podcast. Today I have with me Karol. I will not try to pronounce her last name, I will let her do that. And today we're going to be talking about breaking the cycle. And she's going to be telling us her story and what that means to her and how she went, what the process of breaking the cycle is. Well, without any further ado, Karol, take it away.
Thank you, Moses. It's a privilege to be on your show. I'm just going to share a little bit of how I got here and where I was, and your audience will better understand. So, I wrote a blog recently entitled Breaking the Cycle. What is breaking the cycle? A cycle is patterns that are repeated constantly throughout life, and we never break it. So, we always find ourselves in the same situation, a situation of lack, basically, whether it be a job
Yeah.
or a relationship. We keep repeating the same kind of relationships, the same kind of jobs, but we're never satisfied. Why aren't we satisfied? Because we never dealt with that one issue that happened to us moons ago, whether it's somebody cheated on us or we got fired. And that fear is still ingrained in our head, or a past trauma from our childhood. We never resolved it. We never dealt with it. We never put it to rest. And so it crept up on us and followed us throughout the years. And so until you're consciously able to release it, you're still going to repeat a hamster wheel of life, basically, is what I call it. And so here's
Okay.
how I got here. Um, in April, I was dating somebody, and he just disappeared out of my life. And I was distraught. I was confused. How can somebody that was so good, somebody that the universe gave to me, how could the universe just take him away from me? And I wanted to know why. And so
Yeah.
I started to become obsessed with that, basically. I got into tarot and I got into astrology, and I basically wanted an answer. And there was no answer. I mean, I was never going to find out the truth. And so the more I started to look for an answer, the more I started to look into myself. Was I the cause? Was there something that I was missing? And so I started to learn that I had attachment issues, and I overgave, and I had things from my childhood that I had to deal with. And those were painful. It's very painful to go through a dark night of the soul and look in the mirror and see faults and see a person that you don't even recognize. I wasn't living my authentic self. I was living somebody else's life. Whose life? My father's life. I've been taking care of my father for the last 14 years, and so I became the caregiver. That was my identity. I wasn't Karol. I was the caregiver. I was the one that took
Mm.
care of my father. But what my interests were and who I was and what I was passionate about, nobody knew, because that wasn't my authentic self. And so I spent 2 months in hermit mode, secluded from the world. I actually went to California and stayed at my friend's house and wanted to understand what was so wrong with me. But really, there wasn't anything wrong with me. I just had issues that I had to deal with and I never dealt with. And when I was finally able to deal with them and release them, I was a completely different person. I took all of that anger and transmuted it into things that were more constructive. I wrote blogs, and I started to socialize more, and I started to help people more, and I became a crisis counselor. And so when I wrote this blog, I wanted to inspire people so that they don't have to sit on the couch and eat ice cream when they're broken up with. They can do
Mm.
something more constructive to better
Yeah.
themselves, to raise their vibration. Because at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own future. We can either dictate if it's going to be beneficial for us, if it's going to be for our best interest, or are we going to be living in somebody else's shadow for the rest of our lives? I
Mm.
chose to take my power back. He left me, but that's his issue. Those are his demons that he has to face. They're not mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I wrote the blog kind of for him, in a sense where he had to break his own cycle and he never did, which is why he left me. Something happened to him once in life and that caused him to get scared, and maybe he feared relationships, or maybe he didn't know how to love, whatever. My point is that he's not a bad person. He just didn't break his cycle, and I did. And so my vibration
Okay.
is now at a different place where it was when he was in my life. So now I attract friends or relationships or opportunities that are high vibration. They always say like attracts like. And so when you put yourself in a mindset where you're high vibration and you tell yourself, I will overcome, I will attract what I deserve, and those things will come in time.
Okay. Let me ask on. You mentioned attachment issues, which were some of the things that you started finding out about yourself.
Right.
And the other thing that I understood was that you took on the identity of a caregiver first before the identity of the true Carol. Right.
Yes.
So those are two huge things to find out. So let me touch on the attachment issues. What was the process of finding that out? And like, what was that like? So because if you all of a sudden find that you have this attachment issues, in my head I'm thinking, okay, that can take you to two paths, right? One path can be, oh well, it is what it is, I'll just deal with it the way that I've been dealing with it for the last however long. The other path can be the path that you took, right? Which is to try to understand the effects that this attachment issue has had on you. So I guess I have like two questions. Question one: what was the process of finding? What was the process? What was it like to go through the process of finding out that you have this attachment issues? And then two, what does it feel like to find out that you've been living this life that you have taken on this identity that does not necessarily belong to the true you?
I'm gonna be real with you. It's scary as all hell. It's literally,
Okay.
I thought I was gonna go insane when I realized all that. But let me just start from my dad and the identity stuff. So I became a
Yeah.
caregiver for him because my mother passed away and there was nobody to care for him. He was my dad. I had to play that role. And he lives
Yeah.
with me and I care for him now, but it's different now. So before he was my life, my entire life, I lived for him. All the decisions I made were around him. I was kind of like the
Yeah.
backstory. And so when I came into my own power, I made the decision that even though I love my dad, there had to be boundaries with my dad. I had to be number one. I had to fill my own cup before I could fill anybody else's cup. That's how it works.
Yep.
You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. As far as the attachment goes, I realized that this went back years and years and years. I leached onto people for fear of abandonment. A lot of people are like that. We go into relationships that may not necessarily be the best for us. They may not be healthy for us. But because we're so scared to be alone, we leech onto anybody. Friends, family, relationships, even work. We don't want to,
Yep.
we fear losing a job so much that we will stay and get butchered in a sense. We will, we will lose
Yeah.
money. We will get. The point is, what I'm trying to say is that we put ourselves in situations that are necessarily not the best for us, but we do so because we don't want to have lack. But what we don't realize is by staying in those situations, we have lack. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people continue to do this because number one, they're scared of leaving their comfort zone. That's all they know. That's all they've ever known. And two, well, what happens if I go away from this relationship? I'll end up alone. So it's better that I be in a toxic relationship. I'm still alone because what people don't realize, if you're in a toxic relationship, you're still alone because that person
Yeah.
truly doesn't care about you. And
Right.
if you're at a job that doesn't bring you up but rather bring you down and doesn't praise you for all your accomplishments and may not necessarily pay you as much as you deserve, but because we don't want
Yeah.
to be without a job, we stay in that profession. And so not only did I realize that I had all these issues, I realized that the job that I was in currently was not the job for me. So I left. So I turned my entire life upside down because I realized even my job was not the job that I was meant to be in. I was meant to heal people one conversation at a time. This is what I've always done. I've always had the art of communication, and I can talk to people and I can heal people and I can reassure them that they're not alone. And so this is why this whole thing started. The relationship I was in was just a catalyst for everything else. That's what happens. I'm a very intuitive person, so I believe in like universal law. So the
Okay.
universe will only give you what you can tolerate and what you can handle. But when the universe sees that you're not doing what you're meant to do, it will throw a tower moment at you. A tower moment is something significant that happens in your life that forces you to change.
Okay.
My breakup forced me to change. It could be a birth, it can be a job loss, it can be, God forbid, a death. It can be anything that makes you rethink what you're currently doing in life.
Yeah. Let me before I lose my point. Earlier you mentioned that you needed to fill your own cup first,
Right.
right? Uh, did you feel guilty when that realization came in relation to your father? The fact that you had to fill your own cup first before attending to his needs.
No, because I've been
Okay.
doing this for a few months and I have realized that our relationship has gotten better because we no
Okay.
longer live in a toxic environment. Nobody is yelling at one another. We're both very calm. We have boundaries. Like, for example, my dad doesn't understand boundaries. So if he wants
Okay.
something, I have to do it now or he will yell. But when you
Yeah.
explain to him rationally that I need my time and this is your time, the relationship becomes better. And the same holds true for any relationship. So I feel like the healthiest relationship is when two independent people come together as one, not because they need one another, but because they want one another. That word need is something that people don't understand. People don't need each other. That's where the attachment comes in. I didn't need him, but I needed him to fill that void because I didn't want to be alone. But if you fill your own void and you give yourself that cup of love and you fall in love with yourself, then in reality, you don't need anyone because you have everything that you need right there.
Okay. Now, allow me to step on your toes
Go
here
ahead.
for a second,
Sure.
and you can correct me. So, how do you know that, or did you go down the path of thinking that maybe him leaving was his way of breaking a particular cycle for him? Has that crossed your mind, maybe, or
Um,
that's not valid?
I never thought about it that way, only because
Okay.
ghosting itself is not very high vibration. If you don't want to be with
Okay.
someone, you communicate that with them, or you work on things,
Okay.
or you part ways. Leaving somebody
Okay.
hanging in the dark and just ghosting them is not a very high vibration thing to do. Now, I know what his breaking the cycle would entail because I know his backstory. I'm not going to air
Okay.
it on,
Yep. Yep.
on the
Yep.
radio because it's not my place.
Yep.
But that's his past. And so until he breaks that pattern of where he thinks that all future relationships will be like my previous one, his cycle won't be broken.
Yep.
And we do this, humans do this, right? So if somebody broke up with us, we think that the next person will break up with us too. It's a very human thing to do. So until we're consciously aware that we have this issue, it won't break.
Okay. So another question that's not related to that, but you mentioned about creating boundaries between you and your father,
Right.
and so I guess the question is, in the process of your healing and finding out your past and your attachment issues and everything, did you have to create boundaries for yourself? And if so, what was the process like?
I had to basically rediscover my identity, my life, my relationships, my friendships, and I cut out 95% of everything in my life because I realized that they weren't serving my
Okay.
highest best interest. And so even if I
Okay.
kept people, I still had to have boundaries with everyone because boundaries have to exist. The only way that you can be a high vibrational functioning person in society that allows you to live to your greatest potential is if you put yourself before anybody else. So there has to be
Mm.
boundaries with every situation, every circumstance, and every person that you meet. Otherwise, it becomes all of their baggage goes on top of you, and you're feeding off their negative energy. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants negative
Yeah.
energy or any energy that's not theirs in their life.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, it's like in the on the plane, right? When they're giving the safety briefs, they always tell you to put your own mask first before you help another person. So it is something that is understood conceptually, but in practice, it's hard to do that. So the whole phrase of "it's easier said than done." So can you give some tips, one, two, three different tips of what does it actually look like to set personal boundaries? So, for example, if my personal boundary is I need, let's say, within the context of a romantic relationship, I need an hour, half an hour a day to myself, or it's just me, and you bring that up to your significant other, and ideally, right, you would say, hey, I've set up this boundary, and this is what I need to feed my own being. But in practice, it might ruffle some feathers in the household, right? It might be like, what do you need 30 minutes to yourself for? Like, you don't like me, right? So what does the process of implementing boundaries, what does it look
The
like?
process is actually extremely simple. I'll give you an example from my own relationship with my father. When I wake up in the
Okay.
morning, I like my tea. My tea is my thing. I like to drink my cup of tea in my silence, and I do that around 10:30 in the morning. And he
Okay.
knows when my door is closed, that's my tea time. That gives me a chance to, compose myself for the day in my thoughts. And when you're in a relationship with anyone, whether it be romantic or not, communication is very important. So by you telling your
Hmm.
significant other, hey, I need my 30 minutes. I just, want to be in my thoughts. Your significant other should respect that because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be on top of each other 24/7. That's a one-way highway to separation. You can't. You have to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
independent and live your own life and come together as one. It's not living each other's lives because that doesn't work. Relationships don't work that way. And I know that I learned that the hard way. Sometimes the most
Hmm.
painful lessons are learned the hard way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That
having
makes
your
sense.
30 minutes to in your thoughts, that shouldn't be a problem. And if you
Yeah.
may have to, rethink your relationship or talk about it. Communicate.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense. So you said that you had to do some rethinking, some reevaluating, some looking back in your own past, and doing some digging. Random question:
Yeah.
are you able to figure out what your absolute earliest memory is, like as far back as you can think?
Yeah.
Take your time.
No, it's actually something I'm in therapy. I feel like everybody should be in
Okay.
therapy. So this is something that I was talking
Okay.
to my therapist about last week. We were trying to discover what was the first attachment situation that I had. And I feel like,
Okay.
well, besides, I guess, my mother, she was extremely like Russian. I'm Russian. So they're very
Yep.
maternal, like on top of you
Hmm.
all the time. But I feel like aside from that, probably a best friend that I had. And you know how there are always two friends, and one is more popular and one is less popular, and the less popular
Fair.
one is always in the shadows of the popular one.
Hmm.
And so what happens? That stays with you. And it seems like a very insignificant thing, but that really does mess you up as an adult. Because as an
Hmm.
adult, you always think that you're in the shadows. Your self worth is diminished a great deal. And even though in reality that wasn't the case, I wasn't in the shadows growing up. I had a fulfilling life. I went to school. I have a master's. I did things for myself.
Yeah.
My mind was still 7 years old, and I was still living in the shadows of my friend. I never released that. And so people forget about things that happened to them growing up. But it stays with them because it's evident in how they live. It's evident in their relationships. It's evident in their jobs. It's evident in their friendships. And until you release that and let it go and forgive yourself or forgive your friend or for whoever, it doesn't matter. Because it's
Yeah.
not about accepting what happened, it's about realizing what happened, accepting that it happened, and letting it go. So, what's
So
letting
that
go?
is
Yeah,
so that's how you release it, is accepting that it happened, understand that you had no control over it, and letting
let
go.
it go.
Is that the process of
That's
letting
the
go?
process of just realizing that it happened, forgiving whoever it was if they need forgiveness, and just
Okay.
letting it go. It's very
Okay.
simple. In
Does that
Yeah,
does that include forgiving yourself?
forgiving yourself is the hardest thing. It's probably
Okay.
something that most people wouldn't even think that has to be done, but it's part of the process. You
Yeah.
forgive yourself for being in such a situation, for feeling that way. It's not your fault that you felt this way. You should never apologize for how you feel. Feelings and emotions are very important in this process because essentially you're healing. You're healing yourself from the inside out. And so
Hmm.
forgiving yourself or forgiving whoever is very important in this process.
Are you are you in touch with your Russian roots at all?
Meaning my family?
Yeah, or like do you just speak the language?
Yes.
Do you Are there things that are of the Russian culture that you find yourself craving, missing? Just what it means to belong to a culture.
Well, I was born here. My family immigrated from Russia, and my dad and I speak
Okay.
Russian at home. I live in a predominantly Russian community.
Okay.
As far as family goes, we have one of those messed up families where nobody talks to each other.
Okay.
And we've had that for years. I have no problem talking about it. It's just part of my life. And so it
Yeah.
became me and my dad. That's it. Two peas in one pod. And I love that. I love that I could share my life with him and he can share his with me. And but I'm no longer one. I have my own identity. He has his own identity. We just come together when we have to, kind of thing.
Okay. So the ghosting, the breakup,
Yeah.
happened in April.
April.
You said, right? So allow me to count here. So April, May, June, July. So you're on the 3 month thing
Hmm.
here going. Um, do you feel like you've healed, or what does healing even mean for something like this? Something like this meaning something that's built on something else that is really old, right? So in this case, attachment issues. What does healing look like? Do you ever heal, or is it a transformation that takes a medium to long term?
Great question.
Or okay,
Nobody
yeah,
is ever fully healed, and if anybody tells you that they are, they're lying. Nobody's ever fully healed because there are always going to things that come up, and you always have to perfect yourself and better yourself. Otherwise, there's no point in living. Our job as humans is to evolve and grow and learn. Otherwise, life is boring. And so, healing for me now is being able to accept
I
that I'm
think
not. Yes? I'm sorry.
sorry, I lost you for about 6 seconds
I
there.
don't know where I was up to during those 6 seconds. Um,
Okay,
Talking about healing.
yeah,
Healing, right?
yeah, yeah.
Right. So, healing as of now, where I am at this point, 2.5 months later, is accepting the fact that I had attachment issues. I no longer have them because I understand that I am worthy. I am okay being alone. I fill my own cup, and I no longer need to leech on to people for fear of abandonment because I'm literally falling in love with myself all over again. It's literally relearning who you are as a person, what you like, what you enjoy, where you like to go, what you like to do.
Yeah.
And by doing all of these things and allowing myself to flourish in society, I'm not only learning about myself, I'm healing at the same time.
Okay. Let me interject here with a quick question. Does this flourishing include reconnecting with old friends at all?
In my situation, probably not. Because
Okay.
in my situation, I feel like I have to start over. And
Okay.
I don't know where that is. I honestly have no idea where I'm going in my journey. I have
Yeah.
surrendered to the universe, and I trust that wherever I need to be, I will be, and I will be guided. And so every day I wake up.
Would you
Yeah,
say?
go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that. Would you say that this might be like an off topic here a little bit, but because you've mentioned low vibrations, high
Right.
vibrations, the universe, and energy, do you think that that is to some capacity a substitute to
People?
something that closely resembles a god?
Well, God, universe, Allah, anything. It's whatever you believe in. And so I'm
Okay.
Jewish. I believe in God. But when we're talking about energy, I don't really like to say God because I don't, I just say universe. But it really doesn't matter what you believe
Okay.
in. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. But it's the same thing, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now you'd mentioned that you wrote a letter, a
A
blog
blog.
that excuse me, I will you're gonna read it to the audience here. Um, why did what made you decide to write a letter, a blog that can be super open? I'm assuming I haven't heard it,
Right.
but my assumption is that is an open heart letter, and to let, well, the universe essentially, to you. What led you to write it?
Because there were so many things I wanted to say to him and I couldn't. So my blog is not about him, but writing is cathartic. So once it leaves your head, it you release it. So I wrote it when I was still in a state of anger, and I wanted to tell him that he literally needed to break his own cycle or he's never going to get anywhere in life. But I couldn't tell him that. So I wrote a blog instead. And like I said, I transmuted my anger. It's like alchemy. You turn a
Uh,
negative into a positive. And so
okay.
I turned a negative situation into a positive in hopes that it will inspire somebody else.
Okay. Okay. I'm ready to hear it already. Um, so yeah, let's hear what this is all about. I feel like any time that we go through a life transforming event, the likelihood that someone else is going through it, has gone through it, or will go through it is probably high. So the likelihood that we're gonna go through something that no one else has ever gone through, will never go through, or isn't going through, that likelihood is very small. So I always appreciate when people are like, "Hey, I went through X, I learned Y, and I want to share, so that the rest of the world can partake in this learning experience."
That's
So
that's exactly it. That's essentially what I want to do. That's what I want my career path to be. I want somebody to listen to my story and when they're in the same situation and be like, "Well, how did you do it? Can you help me do it?" And that's what I want to do.
yeah,
That's where my life is going.
okay, okay. Well, I'm ready to hear it if you are.
Okay, sure. Nicholas Sparks once said, "Everyone has a past, But that's just it. It's in the past. You can learn from it, but you can't change it. I do not usually resonate with fortune cookie quotes. Oftentimes, they are just a bunch of words that look fancy on paper, like say what you mean and mean what you say. However, in this case, these words hold substance. The past, by definition, is just a marker of time, yet we as individuals allow the past to place such a rigid hold on our lives. It haunts our mind, body, and soul. Interesting, right? One four-letter word controls some of us to a point that it breaks us down just enough that we can still function, but are on the ledge holding onto a branch. The past does not define us. It is a part of us. The world as a whole is so much more. It is comprised of energies and vibrations that most people cannot begin to fathom. The average person views the universe from a one-dimensional view. It is only when they can let go of these singular moments, emotions, events, are they able to see the world from a multidimensional perspective. Confused yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes all of us. Now that we have established that the past for some of us is controlling, let us delve deeper. What brought you here? What is the most limiting belief keeping you from what you want right now? Most people come from a place of lack. I don't have enough money, my job is not fulfilling, I run from relationships. All of these emotions stem from that one past emotion that was never dealt with and put to rest. Instead, it was bandaged and patched up like a boo-boo. I call this event the tower moment. When my mom passed away, I felt my world collapse. Everything I knew or believed was just a blur. My best friend was taken from me, and I wanted to know why. For years, I closed myself off, seeking clarity for a question that I realized later I did not have an answer. I was forced to take the practical approach. My mom did not care for herself and in turn passed away. Often we think that clarity entails some Buddha-like fortune cookie explanation when simplicity is enough. Whatever tower moment you endured at one point in your life that you felt you were not worthy, trickled down years later, in turn causing you to live in a state of fear. This explains why your job is lacking and your relationships do not satisfy you. Perhaps a shift in perspective is needed. We cannot control the actions of other people, but we can control our responses. Let me decipher this one example. In true, unfiltered Karol fashion. If person X was an a-hole to you 20 years ago and got into your core, why would you give that person the validation to sit with that feeling for you for the next 20 years? That person does not deserve 5 minutes spent agonizing over them. The only thing this does is further put you in a lower vibration. I am not an advocate of revenge, not so much because I'm this peaceful angel from heaven, but rather I think the only revenge that is worth my effort is putting that energy into something that will benefit my well-being. Educate yourself, read a book, write a blog, join a meetup. A person is truly in our lives, people are truly in our life to support us, will be happy with our success. And those that are in our lives solely to see us fail will be miserable. This is when you start cleaning house, so to speak. Solitude is hard, but being surrounded by people who truly are not in your life to celebrate with you is far worse. As you continue this process, your intuition will tell you who truly deserves to be in your life. You will watch people fall and you will not even bat an eye. It is truly remarkable how our brain works. When we are open and receptive, we see things so much clearer. That person you thought was your best friend, your spouse that you thought was loyal, and even family, who by every sense of the word was supposed to give you unconditional love. When you live your life in a low vibration, you attract low vibration surroundings. It does not allow you to open yourself up to people who truly love you and want to support you. One cannot go through life thinking that everyone is in the shadow of this one person. Some people are truly good inside. Let go of the reins of distrust you are holding onto for dear life. It is exhausting as all hell. Your arms must be so tired. When we are destructive in our thoughts, our vibration depletes, and as a result, all of our relationships and surrounding environment follow suit. Only when we begin to see the world through love does our vibration increase, and as a result, everything around us starts going in our favor. The more present you are in the moment, the more clarity you will have to approach a situation as it comes. The more you let go and enjoy life, embrace it, that initial emotion and fear will allow you to truly experience and live in the present. Think of your emotions in tiers. If you're on level 1, your fears and negative thoughts see the world as gray and bleak. As you slowly begin to let go of those emotions, you start gradually going to level 2, and the world looks a little bit greener. Eventually, you get to level 10 and you see all the colors of the rainbow. And let me tell you, level 10 is hella sexy. To move forward, we must come to terms with the fact that most of us will never get the answers that we seek about the past. The future has yet to be determined. Fearing something that is a long way ahead serves absolutely no purpose. The consumption
Yeah.
of fear is most likely stronger than what could actually happen if you let go. Thus, by process of elimination, we must in turn focus on the here and now. Allow yourself to experience new things and open your heart to new people. Ask yourself if your environment and everything that encompasses it truly serves your better good, rather than a vortex of negative space. You will be surprised at what you will find. It is interesting to mention that most of our emotions and fears do not come from the heart, but rather from the head. Our brains are programmed in such a capacity that it triggers both our emotion and our actions. Thus, I think it is wise to make decisions from the heart in some situations. Your intuition will guide you. Your brain can be susceptible to manipulation or trickery. I call it the joker. It can make you perceive something that is not reality. Be open and honest. Know exactly what you desire. Your heart will not disappoint. You know what, beautiful soul? That is okay. You are enough. You are worthy of love and beautiful gifts from the universe. You are accepted. Once you open your heart and embrace life and everything it is to offer, you will be unstoppable. Be a rebel for once. Rise up. Break the cycle. Repeat after me. I am worthy. My heart is open. I can move mountains without having to control them. And I am ready to kick ass. Like a phoenix from the ashes, they may defeat you, burn you, insult you, injure you, and abandon you. They will not, shall not, and cannot destroy you. For you, like Rome, were built on ashes, and you, like a phoenix, know how to resurrect.
Wow. That that's beautifully written. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, wow. I think that's a good place to stop. I hope this message runs into the right person at the right time. Um, yeah, and thank you again for coming to the Moses Kabadana podcast, Karol.
I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to share my story. And if any of you, any of your listeners out there find themselves in a situation where they want a way out but they can't find one, they can reach out to me and I'll gladly guide them along the way. Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, where would they reach out you at? What's your do you have like social media, email,
Um,
website?
I'm on Facebook. You can look me up, Karol. You didn't write out my name, but it's should I spell it out?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
Shepelskaya. Shepelskaya. I'm the only one, so you can't miss it.
Okay, thanks again for coming to the Moses Kabadana podcast. Until
Thank you.
next
Love
time.
and light. Bye
Live in
bye.
life. Bye.